Hey everybody, welcome back to Random Chatter. This is a very special episode for many reasons, not the least of which is we have a very special guest with us this week. We have Kelvin from the Mediocre Modeler YouTube channel. Kelvin, how you doing?
I'm doing good.
Good. It is awesome to have you here. We had you on Force Chatter this week, and we were talking about prop building and model making and 3D printing and all that good stuff. And as people who are watching this on YouTube, as opposed to listening to the podcast, can see, you have various different props and models there, and lots of good stuff. So we had a really cool conversation about that. And people should be subscribing to your channel, and we put a link in the show notes.
I really appreciate that.
People have no
Thank
excuse
you.
not to. Plus, I got to show this off. Give me like 5 seconds. Because this is awesome. This is one of the things that Kelvin made. Now, my lighting in here is a little rough, so the green screen is kind of weirding it out a little bit. But look at that Mandalorian helmet. That is...
Eric, I think you should put that on.
Well, you just want me to have helmet head on the show.
I do.
And I didn't cheap out. I had matching gloves.
That's true. I didn't. So, full confession, I almost forgot to bring this over for the podcast because I set aside, as soon as I opened it, I set aside a place up above my television and put it up there with the gloves kind of like on display. When I'm like, oh shoot, we're about to record. I forgot the helmet. I had to go grab the helmet off my TV, off of its mantle now. And the gloves are over there, but like these black gloves with this little Beskar plate, matching colors on it. It's awesome. But anyway, point is, Mediocre Modeler, search for it on YouTube or hit the link in the show notes. And you need to watch this guy. He's got a cool approach to his videos where he doesn't just like show you, hey, step 1, 2, and 3, and you get this. He's like, hey, I tried this thing, didn't quite go as planned. So now we're going to modify it. We're going to do this other thing with it. And just watching the journey of the stuff you make is incredible, and I look forward to it every time. Every time, you know, I will say this too. I've got countless YouTube subscriptions. Yours is one of like maybe 2 that I have it set to get notifications because I don't want my phone going off all the time and stuff. But I actually turned on the notifications for yours, which for me personally, like that's a thing. That's so.
Well, I can say the same thing. Random
Thank
Chatter.
you.
This is my jam.
Well, we are
man.
happy to have you on the show here too. Now, what we're going to do this episode, we're going to talk about 2 big things that came out recently because we weren't here last week. So we got a little bit of catching up to do. And those are going to be the big reviews for this week. We're going to throw out a couple of other little things here too. One of the things Kelvin hasn't seen yet, so we're going to save that to the end. He has not seen Zack Snyder's version of Justice League yet. So we don't want to ruin it for you. So we're going to talk about all the other stuff so that you get to participate. And then at the end, you can duck out safely and then go watch the 4 hours that is the monstrous Justice League movie. And then we'll talk about it there at the end. So, and we will be discussing spoilers. So if you haven't seen it yet, do the same thing as Kelvin is. Stick through the rest of the episode and then, you know, set this aside somewhere and come back to it later. But let's jump in to Falcon and the Winter Soldier. All of us have seen it, I assume. Yes. And we're all caught up, all 4 episodes. We're good.
No.
You guys haven't seen the...
4? No.
Oh, wait till you see the 4th episode, Tim.
Just 2.
Let me tell you right now. I'm kidding. Okay, 2 episodes. What do you guys think? This is... it's weird because WandaVision was not supposed to be the first MCU show, and COVID kind of messed everything all up, right? So I think this was supposed to have been first. They had some production delays, and then WandaVision was going to be second. This feels more like MCU movie style kind of storytelling. I'm kind of on the fence about this one. Like the first episode, it was, okay, I want to see more. And the second one was, okay, this is more the type of introduction I wanted to see. Now we got the intro out of the way. I want to see more. It's like when you watch a movie and somebody calls you 20 minutes into the movie and they're like, what do you think of the movie? And you're like, well, I'm only 20 minutes into it. It looks like it's going to get really, really good. Right now, like, Nobody's done anything yet. That's kind of what the show feels like to me so far. I like it. It's good, but
I felt that way more on the WandaVision on this
Yeah?
one. I mean, so Wanda, if you weren't a fan of old sitcoms, those first couple episodes really didn't mean anything
True.
to you. But just the opening of Falcon Winter Soldier, I mean, it was action from the get go. I mean,
yeah,
I'm like, okay, let's go. I'm ready.
Yeah.
true. I think for me, it was just that I was expecting, again, there's only, what, 6 episodes? And they're a little bit longer episodes, but there's still only 6. So you
I think
gotta,
so.
you gotta hit the ground running, as you said. And they did that with the action. With the plot, though, like the two of them weren't even together in the first episode. And that, you know, it's okay. But it bothered me a little bit. Because I want to see the interaction between the two. And even like not in the action scenes. Like in the second episode, the banter back and forth was great. Like, and the moments where they were more serious moments, like the discussion they had in front of the cops and on the street when they went to see Isaiah, or the sillier, goofier things like the staring contest in the shrink's office, which was also kind of serious, but kind of not. Like, all of the banter between the two of them is great. And even in the trailers, you're seeing that and you're like, wow, that's going to be like the reason to watch the show. And then the first episode, there's 0 of it. That felt weird to me. Tim, you're the MCU guy. What are your thoughts so far on all this? I
thoroughly enjoyed the first episode.
Okay.
I was all in on it. I thought it was a terrific introduction to the series. I thought it was very appropriate that they did Sam's storyline and Bucky's storyline, because they had to get us caught up on where these guys were in their lives. And there's so much of it that was very distinct to each of them, and I think necessary for the story moving forward. So they had to build those things up. Certainly the full expectation was that in episode 2, they were going to get together, which they did. I gotta say, and you know, my full review is over on MCU TV.
Mm-hmm.
This second episode, I was kind of disappointed with. Well, it had some really, really terrific moments in it, both in terms of the fight on the trucks was fantastic, and some of the like serious grounded stuff I thought was really good. There were like some of the bantery things, like the therapist scene, which should have been half as long as it actually was, because it was, well, I understand that the audience was feeling the awkwardness that the characters were. There was actually too much of it. And like there was a whole part of it that they could have and should have cut out. There's also not a lot of consistency with John Walker and his personality. So it was really, that second episode was really, really bumpy to me. It felt very. You
kind of had the opposite feeling than I did then, because I thought the first episode was a little bumpy, good stuff, but bumpy. And then the second episode, I thought, like, kind of picked the quality up, and you feel like it just this last one just didn't mesh very well.
Yeah. No, though, that so I mean we're clearly going to be heading into really the main storyline starting in the next episode, and the next episode, so episode 3 and episode 4, are written by the same guy who created and wrote oh my gosh,
we could guess.
John Wick.
Oh, John Wick. Okay.
So expect some very, very heavy hitting, awesome action episodes. And I read an interview with him that he did a little while ago. And basically he said that Marvel Studios pushed him, which I find like incredible, considering like, hey, I've seen John Wick. I can't imagine that you can like be pushed beyond that. And so like this guy wrote stuff which he thought, all right, we're doing a streaming series, maybe there's some stuff that they're not going to want to do, or some limits that they're going to have in terms of action or budget or whatever. And he submitted his stuff, and Feige and they actually have kind of similar in the very, 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 very fundamental concept of Lucasfilm, but way different to their story group. And they call it the Parliament over at Marvel Studios. And they actually do help writers. Okay. So they're giving full feedback on scripts that are supported or that are submitted and all that kind of stuff. And he said quite literally, one of their things was make this bigger and blow more stuff up. All right.
Okay.
So episodes 3 and 4, I am totally in. Totally in.
All right. Lou, your thoughts on this one? On the first two?
I'm with Kelvin. I liked this series start better than the WandaVision start. Not that I didn't get what they're trying to do with the whole, old sitcom type TV shows,
Sure.
but I just found this was much more accessible. My concern after the first episode was, did they just blow their entire special effects budget for the first episode? Because I was like, wow, it was like a movie watching, what they had done. Yeah.
It's not Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. where there are 2 episodes in the entire season that have awesome effects and the rest don't.
Right.
These truly are feature film budgets.
Which is why
scale,
we have only 6 episodes, though. Like
yeah, probably.
If we were going to get like 10, 12, 20 episodes, no.
I mean, you say only 6, but we're going to get like 5.5, 6 hours worth of stuff out of it. So,
right.
That's pretty damn good.
Though? Like the first 2, what were the run times?
About 50 minutes.
I thought they were like 45. And then 5 minutes of credits.
With the credits, yeah, there were 50 something with the credits.
Yeah. So they were WandaVision definitely did fall short of the 6-hour mark.
Yeah, it did.
But they were Feige and other people from Marvel Studios have been like repeatedly saying 6 hours, 6 hours, 6 hours. So I expect that we're going to get between 5.5 and 6 hours of stuff. Basically what he said is that there's kind of an economy of scale with it, and 6 hours is really that sweet spot. He said, because if it goes over 6 hours, they're actually spending more money than they're getting.
I know.
If it's too far under 6 hours, then they're spending. Yeah, it's
I
not
just
working
remember,
out.
Babylon 5, we used to get 14 hours per season.
More than that.
Well, 22 episodes,
sure
41 minutes an episode
quality,
without commercials.
I'm sure it had the same quality of effects.
Battlestar Galactica, 14 hours a season. Multiple seasons.
We're spoiled by how long the series were, but I think we're getting better content in these shorter,
definitely.
one shots.
But give us more of the better content then. Like, I know. I know.
So let me ask you,
Eric, do you need to learn how to watch TV?
I have more practice watching TV than experts say any human being should have.
No, but seriously, so many people I've seen so many people complaining about this whole, it's taking them long to get into the story and we just want action. Then go watch a Marvel movie.
But I don't even want the action so much. I want this.
They put this stuff into 2 hours. When you're watching something that's episodic in 6 hours, you're getting a story.
Right.
It's very, very different writing.
I agree. I like it better. Give us more of it.
Well, here I have a question. Yeah. So in the first episode, you got to see Sam's background with his family and blah, blah, blah. And then so in the second, you don't, at least with Winter Soldier, you got the therapist, so you got that interaction, but it's like, Sam's backstory is it done? You introduced me to his family, his sister, all this stuff.
Right.
And then you don't bring it up at all. I mean, I know it would be hard to try and fill into the story that they were giving us, but I feel kind of slighted because I didn't get that information.
And you
already handed it to me.
That's the thing. Like, you've introduced it. They have to bring it up again back later in the series, and I'm sure they probably will. If they don't bring it up again later in the series, it shouldn't have been in the first episode. Like, you include it and you have it go somewhere, or you don't include it in the first place. And it was interesting stuff.
Yeah.
Again, my main beef with the first episode was more that, I mean, you don't really, you get a little bit of the Flag Smashers, and you got enough for a first episode. That's fine. But everything that I was looking forward to in the series was more about the development of the story with the two characters together, and they're not even teamed up yet. And it's okay. Again, I'm going to backpedal a little bit. It's fine. But I like everything they did with Sam's backstory. And I even like the fact that Sam's getting more backstory than Winter Soldier is, because frankly, we got a decent amount of backstory on Winter Soldier through the films.
Yeah, right.
And Sam was, touched upon a little bit, but like kind of just mentioning like his background. It didn't actually get backstory. Now we get to see his family, and we get to what I really find fascinating. And this is one of those things that you never get in superhero movies, is the conversation in the bank. So like, does Tony like cut you a check every 2 weeks, or like, how does that work? How does it work? Like, I've had my son ask me that before. Like, how much money does like Captain America make? And I'm like,
that's a good question.
Well, so how does he pay his bills?
No,
I guess, and I said, I guess, Tony's not going to let anybody starve. So I'm sure like he helps out. Like, what do you say? You don't know. And so here, this brings us into a very real world context. And
which I really appreciate. I really thought like that was a worthwhile thing.
Yeah.
And I actually posed the same question that you guys had a couple days ago, yesterday, on MCU TV, with some of these characters, which seem to have significant pieces, and they mean something to either Sam or Bucky, both from the first episode and the second episode. So like you said, Sam's family, Isaiah from the second episode, that like characters that seemingly are really important. Are we ever going to see them again? I don't know. Like, the trajectory of the story doesn't really seem that we will. So I have no idea.
Yeah,
I have no idea. And so it seems, well, I want them to tell a story. I don't want them to give us a character that is important to a main character for 5 minutes and then say, hey, peace out.
See, but I don't mind that, because to me, that is more about, it feels realistic to me, because this guy is important to him. He's part of that part of the story, but I don't care about that part of the story. I mean, it's nice to know it's there. It's context for what he's going through, but it's a bit part, it doesn't need to be expanded on.
You're talking about Isaiah?
That's fair.
Yeah.
But it could come back later. So we know.
Right. But if it doesn't, I'm not concerned by that personally.
Yeah,
I think it was there. It's an issue in his mind, but you know what? We're not here to solve the problem of him and his sister running, their business. We're here for what he's doing as a superhero.
Right.
But it's cool that he's got a real life going on that we got to know about.
I think for me, going into this, I was really looking forward to the banter back and forth between the two main characters, kind of the buddy cop sort of team up thing, right? But so far, what I have liked a lot about the first two episodes has been looking at kind of the PTSD of Winter Soldier and the real life ramifications of what he's going through. And then also the marginalization that Sam is experiencing. Everything from your Captain America sidekick comment to the scene of the bank to the scene where the two of them are arguing the street. The cops come up and they approach Sam because he's black. And then they go to Winter Soldier because he's white. And they're like, is this guy bothering you? It's like, no, Bucky was the one kind of being the pain in the butt in the first place. But like, but that happens. That's real. And then, it, as soon as he recognizes that, the black guy is an Avenger or we've seen in other cases a sports star or a celebrity or a musician or whatever. It's like, oh, hey, no, yeah, no, you're good, dude.
Then everything's good.
And so this all brings it down to a very real life context. And I like that. I don't want to see, we're going to talk about Justice League later in this episode. And I guess for me, that's always been one of the big differences between Marvel and DC is, I don't want to see the Superman, oh, everything is fine, blah, blah, blah. And that's another thing, like Superman, where's his money come from? He works as a reporter. He's not getting paid crap, but they never show that because it's all about, he is the superhero. But in Marvel, the superheroes are the real people. It's the Peter Parker. We talked about this before. The stories are about Peter Parker having to deal with being Spider-Man. And in DC, it's about Batman having to try to deal with being Bruce Wayne. It's a totally different perspective on the human experience.
Mm-hmm.
I like that they're nailing that in this show so far. That's my take. Any other comments or anything on Falcon and Winter Soldier before we move on?
The one thing I will say that kind of caught me. So I wasn't a comic book kid. Okay. So all these stories are all new to me. And so I wasn't when he gave the shield back, you figured, the government's going to try and redo the thing. Right. And so I left episode 1 just absolutely hating this guy as I was supposed to. Mm-hmm. That was what they were going for. But with the opening of episode 2, and you get that little snippet of his backstory just at the very beginning, and you can just see, look, I'm just a guy that I just want to do, what was his line? I just want to do the job.
Yeah.
And his
want to be the best I can be.
Just like, this is the job, right. So now I have to rethink. I'm like, I guess I can't hate him that much. He's just.
But then by the end of the episode, he was a raging dickbag.
Yes.
So have you guys?
And they were.
Have any of you guys?
Consistent, and that killed me.
Any of you guys read the comics with him in it?
Yes.
No.
Okay. So I've read the old stuff from like the late 80s through mid 90s. I've not read anything more recent than that. But John Walker in the comic books, he did replace Captain America for a while. Steve Rogers came back, and then Walker became a character called U.S. Agent. And he joined the West Coast Avengers, which was led by Iron Man, and the East Coast Avengers was led by Captain America. He was always kind of like, yeah, he's a good guy. But as you said, Tim, and I won't repeat it, but he's a jerk. Like he's flat out a jerk. He's overconfident in his abilities.
Yeah.
And he knows what his wheelhouse is and he stays within it. But like, it's all about, let's just get the job done. And whereas Steve Rogers is always like, well, wait a minute. What kind of consequences is this going to have? How is this going to affect people?
Yeah.
And Walker's like, no, there's a job to do. We get the job done. We do the thing. We get out. That's what we do. And
the whole reason why Walker is with the West Coast Avengers is because the U.S. government wanted him to be there.
Yeah, he's very much a stooge.
So in the comics, he's basically, I would say he's planted there, but it's not like in any clandestine manner.
No,
everyone is aware of it. And so it's like, well, basically anytime something is going on that the government doesn't like, they task him to do something, which ends up being a very common point of conflict that the rest of the West Coast Avengers don't like it.
Right.
And so, it's a constant issue. I hate the guy. I hate the character.
I'm on the fence. Like, I didn't mind him in the comic books too much. I didn't like him, but I didn't hate him either. And I'm not sure. I'm with you, Kelvin. I'm on the show. I kind of have to reassess things, but yeah, at the end of the episode, I'm like, yeah, no, I'm kind of leaning more toward not so much.
Yeah, I don't like you. You're right.
Well, and I think that's where they're trying to drive you too, right? Because they want you to be. I mean, it's not called U.S. Agent. It's called Falcon and Winter Soldier.
Right.
I mean, you want to be on their side, not on this other guy's side who's got the shield now and shouldn't have the shield because it wasn't what it was meant to be. And it's like, really? What kind of a jerk is our government being by giving the shield away to some other guy and trying to promote him? Like, it doesn't make sense.
But again, on the flip side, the government owned the shield.
Did they?
Why didn't they take it away from Falcon before then? If that were the case, if it was ours, most governments would just like, I'm going to need that.
The public perspective of it, maybe.
Yeah, but did the government ever actually own the shield?
They created the shield. They brought in Stark as a like a contractor to develop the shield for the military.
Yeah.
Well, you know what happened.
And even oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. No. Well, I'm sure they said, if you want that shield, you go take it away from
right.
Yeah.
Please, sir, can I please have the shield, please? Like, you're not just going to go rip it out of his hands. So.
And the thing is, even handing it over to the Smithsonian is technically a trust of the United States. Mm-hmm. So they're not like an independent organization or anything like that. They are created by and for the United States. So technically the government owned the shield once Sam gave it over to him.
Yeah.
True.
Well, I don't know. There's a lot of stuff they've got to get through the next 4 episodes, but I'm looking forward to it. I'm liking the show. It sounds like we all are, even if we have our qualms about some things. It's still, a lot of times when we discuss this stuff, we can nitpick from an analysis point of view, but at the end of the day, we still really like the content. I mean, we didn't care about it so much, we wouldn't talk about it, right? So before we get to Justice League, though, let's go around the room, so to speak, here, and go over the different things we've seen recently that we would recommend people either watch or stay away from. Kelvin, normally I'd start with you being the guest, but I also kind of blindsided you with that, so I can hit somebody else first, give you some time to think about stuff. Do that? Okay. So
do that. Yeah.
Tim, what have you been watching recently?
All right. So I've just got a handful of things here. We watch Midnight Sky. So Midnight Sky is on Netflix, a fairly new movie, I think came on in the last year or so. George Clooney and Felicity Jones. And it's basically you are on the cusp of an apocalypse kind of thing. Good story. It moves, I won't say slow, I'll say it moves deliberately.
Okay.
And there are twists in it which are really interesting right up until, literally the last minutes of the movie. So I would watch it. I would recommend that.
Okay.
We watched Lupin. Lupin is freaking fantastic. This is also on Netflix. It is officially it was this was a season 1. I think there are 5 episodes in this season. This moves fantastically. So Lupin is based on a series of French novels with what they call it, basically a gentleman thief.
Okay.
So kind of if you consider like Sherlock Holmes became a thief.
Right. Or Grendel, if you're a comic book reader.
Yes, yeah. So, but they set it in present day.
Okay.
And it's absolutely brilliant. The lead in it is Omar Sy. He was in Jurassic World. He was Bishop in Days of Future Past.
Yeah, okay.
Really, really great actor. So this was originally done in French. But being on Netflix, you can get it subtitled. You can also get it dubbed in English. The dubbing is actually really good. It's not like, there've been a lot of bad dubs.
Do they get Omar Sy to do the English? Because he speaks English too, right?
I believe they did. Okay. I believe that I'd have to watch something again that had him in it to kind of like
wouldn't
get his voice, but yeah. So really fantastic. So you have like this intrigue, like it's almost like a reverse detective thing and like perfect crime kind of stuff, but it evolves. So it's a series. It's not just one crime. It becomes a series of crimes, and you see what his motivations are and the people that he works with and all that. And it's just brilliant, absolutely brilliant. So highly recommend that. And then lastly, Hobbs Shaw. And everyone knows I am generally down on Fast and Furious movies because they're all the freaking same.
Yeah.
Hobbs Shaw, the first 2 acts, really good, funny as hell. Thoroughly loved it. I thought it was great. The third act devolved to Fast and Furious stuff, to which I kind of tuned out of half of it. But I mean, if you like the Fast and Furious stuff with like the really stupidly outrageous car race things that would never occur and like defy physics in every single way, sure, have at it. Still, all in all, not a bad movie. Even if, for me, who really doesn't like Fast and Furious stuff, I thought it was good. It was funny.
Okay.
And that's on HBO Max.
All right. Lou, what have you been watching?
Absolutely nothing.
All right, moving on.
I mean, the only things
Great,
I've seen
and on
new
to Kelvin.
we're going to talk about next, really. I haven't seen anything new, my normal catch-up stuff. So, yeah, I'll just bypass this week.
Well, let me ask you this. Have you been keeping up with Debris?
I'm an episode behind, but yeah, I'm watching it still. Yeah,
I've been keeping up. It's continuing to be good. I'm liking it. I think that,
so. Yeah, it's not going where I thought it was going to go, but I am still liking the show.
No, yeah, it's got just enough conspiracy to it to be interesting, and it's got just enough of the sci-fi weirdness of the week to feel.
My only problem with it is it feels like other NBC sci-fi stuff that's been good for one season and canceled in the last couple of years.
It could be worse. It could be on Fox.
That's true. Yeah, they have the same kind of track record.
But, I mean, you're right, but it's always that way with sci-fi. Like you're either you luck out or, so we'll just keep our fingers crossed. I have been watching the 2 things I want to talk about. One is Invincible. It is an animated superhero series based on a comic book by Robert Kirkman, the creator of The Walking Dead. In fact, it stars a lot of the voice actors from The Walking Dead. And it's about a teenage boy whose father is a superhero, kind of like the Superman analog in this universe. And so now the son gets powers in the first episode, and it's kind of him trying to learn how to be a superhero. There is a major plot twist in the first episode that really sets the stage for the rest of the series. Without the plot twist, the first episode's going to seem like well written and good dialogue, but it feels like things we've seen a bunch of times before. Until you get to the plot twist. By the way, if you have kids, do not let your kids anywhere near this show. I can think of few R-rated horror movies that have as much blood and guts and gore and detailed exploding body parts and stuff as this.
No, that's fun.
It is definitely geared toward grown-ups. I'll leave it at that. But it's really good. The writing is really good. I'm only maybe 2 or 3 episodes into it. It's fun, but it's also got a certain level of darkness to it. Not enough to be brooding or like a downer, but enough to stay interesting. The other show I want to talk about, I'm only a couple of episodes into this one. It's on Apple TV Plus. They've done very little to promote it. And it's going to be hard to explain. It's called Calls. All it is it's little 15-minute episodes, and I think there's only maybe 8 of them, of phone calls. That's it. And
that sounds riveting, Eric.
Stand by.
Comic? Okay.
The video is just like the text of the phone calls with some little like weird oscillating, like oscilloscope type things going on in the background that kind of adapt to the emotional state of the call as things go along. And
it's getting better.
They have famous actors doing all of the voices for the different calls, and each episode is its own segment and its own distinct little thing. So it's very much like, think Dark Mirror, but then there is kind of a thing that's going on across all of the episodes.
So there's a common thread somehow?
It's a loose thread, but there is a common thread, and it's kind of an end of the world sort of thing going on. And I think maybe the first episode is a little more intense than emotionally intense than the others. But if you watch the first episode, you'll see what I'm talking about. And I immediately started playing the second one. Like it kind of hooks you. In fact, I was actually watching. It's the type of thing you could like listen to while you're doing other things. Instead, I was watching the screen the whole time with like almost nothing happening. I stopped using my iPad. I stopped using my laptop, and I was just sitting there watching the screen. Check it out. It's 15 minutes. Come on.
Okay.
Okay. It's a small investment. Try it out. It reminds me a lot of something that Straczynski did. JMS, the guy that created Babylon 5 and some other things. He had an internet radio drama series, kind of, again, Black Mirror, Twilight Zone-ish, called City of Dreams. And it was just little audio dramas. This is the same kind of thing, except the dramas are all just via telephone. Anyway, great cast. Like, they've got perfect cast list. Performances, perfect. Like, you'd think they're real, like, 911 calls and stuff. Really good. I highly recommend it. And yet there's no way I'm going to give it a description that's going to do it justice, but it's worth checking out. Moving on. Kelvin, you're up. We gave you as much time to come up with things as you could. And, you can pull a Lou, too. If you haven't really seen anything you'd recommend, that's fine. But we would like to hear what you've been watching.
Well, okay. So on the heels of short, episodic little things, I happened upon the Dust channel, I think. It's on YouTube. Uh-huh. And what it is a bunch of like 15, 20-minute sci-fi shorts. And it could be anything from animation to live action, something like an Ex Machina thing or Deep Space. You have no idea what you're going to get. And the stories are really good. Nothing has anything to do with anything. So you have no idea what you're going to get. And so it's one of those where you watch one and you go, well, that was really good. And then next thing you know, you've been there an hour.
Nice.
So
this almost sounds like Love, Sex, and Robots.
See, I've never seen that.
Oh, from Netflix.
Okay.
Yeah, like different, like an anthology series, sci-fi stuff, and yeah, this sounds similar. Yeah. This sounds interesting. Did you say it was a YouTube channel?
I ran into it on YouTube, and I think they might have gotten picked up by the Sci-Fi Channel, because I think I saw the other day that the Dust logo was in the corner. I'm like, oh, okay. It would be perfect for the Sci-Fi Channel, but that was, like I said, there were a couple of them I'm just like, and they don't always end happily. I'm just saying, it's not always happy sci-fi.
Oh wow! Just looking at the thumbnails here, this looks really interesting.
Ironically, the way I stumbled on it, I was doing research for a model, and the first one that showed up was kind of a modification of the plane that I was looking at, and that's what made me stop and watch. I think it's called The Ocean Maker.
Interesting. It
was really good. Post-apocalyptic, she's trying to seed clouds. I'll leave it at that because it gets into some blood and guts, but it's really good. So the other thing that I had, believe it or not, I'm a really big Godzilla fan, but I had not seen Kong Skull Island. And so since you've got Kong versus Godzilla coming up, I figured I better sit down with this because I'm sorry, I'm Team Godzilla. I just am. And,
I forgive you.
And even Sam Jackson was not enough to pull me into Kong Skull Island.
Yeah.
I just don't believe just him being in a movie is going to save the movie.
Yeah, Tim.
Never speak poorly of Sam Jackson.
Well, I think he blew it out of the park in that movie. I mean,
yeah.
As much as I liked the Kong aspect of it, I think Crazy Sam Jackson is really scary.
Oh, yes.
I mean,
because there really wasn't much else to the movie.
Right.
Yeah. Well, it was enough to the point where, that dream you have where you're late for class and the teacher calls you out on it? Yeah, I had that dream and the teacher was Sam Jackson.
Oh, that's harsh.
That's a great dream. Any dream with Sam Jackson's a great dream.
That would scare me. Like, I've had some like crazy nightmares and stuff. None of them would come close to Sam Jackson, like yelling at me in front of my peers. Like, that's a road I don't want to go down.
But yeah, that's all I've been watching.
Okay. I've still got to catch up on the most recent Godzilla, King of the Monsters. I've got to watch that.
It was
I
good.
haven't seen it either.
It was good. My problem with the whole new Godzilla series, I think all the monsters are just too big. They just for the landscape they're trying to,
and they keep
it just
bigger.
doesn't work. Yeah.
Every movie, like, they're bigger and bigger, and it's like, I know they're trying to go for this grandiose thing, but Godzilla is not intended to pick up a building and swing it like a baseball bat.
Yeah. Well, and they've done the same thing with Kong too, right? The Peter Jackson Kong was smaller, and then the one on Skull Island was bigger, and then this new one is going to be even bigger. So I don't know.
They also, by the way, are there's a huge lack of Jaegers in these movies.
All right, moving along.
Completely convinced.
How's that Pacific Rim animated series, Tim?
It's pretty good.
You know, the pitch of his voice went up a little bit at the end there, like when you're telling a lie. It's like
glowing review.
Pretty good.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it wasn't outstanding, but it was good. Okay. I enjoyed it. It had its ups and downs, but it got to where it was going.
Definitely
eventually.
something that needs to be added to the upcoming Godzilla versus Kong movie.
I think so.
All right. Well, we are going to, on that note, we are going to start talking about Zack Snyder's Justice League. But before we do, Kelvin, I want to thank you for sticking around with us tonight, letting people know what you've been watching, talking about props and 3D printing and modeling, stuff like that. So why don't you remind people where they can find you online? I know not only do you have a YouTube channel, you've got a Facebook group for 3D modelers. You probably have social media stuff like we're supposed to. So why don't you tell people where they can find you online?
I try and make it really easy. Pretty much all my stuff is under Mediocre Modeler, both on YouTube and Facebook. We do have, if you're into 3D printing, there is a Facebook group, I think it's 3D Printing Ready. I don't know the name of my own 3D group. I'm on Instagram as Bat Dagger, but that's my gamer name. But I post a lot of stuff on there too. So, and then if you join the Discord server, I am usually on the Legends channel on Mondays and Thursdays with Jedi Girl and David.
Excellent. All right. Well, we will find you there. And in the meantime, take care, sir. Have a good evening, and we will catch you again soon.
Thanks, guys. It was fun.
Thanks, Calvin.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining.
Thanks for being here.
All right. So let me change the display over here. See if I can do this correctly. Oh. Almost. Do we have Tim? We have Tim. Okay. There we go. So we have too much Tim.
What?
It's okay. We zoomed in on Tim and then we cut away and we're fixing things. It's all fixed now.
There's never too much.
There's always too much Tim.
Thank you, Lou.
All right.
Well, right now you've got, basically two Tims and one on either side of you, Eric. This is scary. Yeah.
Zack Snyder's Justice League. Tim, I remember you having some doubts about whether can it really be that different. You're not even adding new footage or filming like maybe another 2 to 3 minutes, I think they said, of new footage. You're just taking old footage that ended up on the cutting room floor. You're making 4 hours into it. How different can the movie really be? Tell us.
So this was considerably different than the original release. Really, the overall story was largely similar, but the plot lines in the middle of that story were considerably very, very different. They did some very different things, introduced characters differently. There were some different effects that were in it, some better, some not. They did a lot with this. And I got to say, for being a 4-hour-long film, it moved. It did not feel like a 4-hour-long film. That said, they probably could have tidied it up a bit and got it down to a good 3 hours of movie. Yeah,
I agree.
I have grading for different aspects of the film, if you guys are interested.
Yeah.
I've given letter grades.
Okay. I think that sounds fair. Why don't you go over the list, and then Lou and I will take them one by one and we'll throw in ours as well. So why don't you, let's take them one by one. Give us an aspect and what your grade was.
Okay. Overall story. I gave it an A.
I would agree with that. I think that.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
So we've got two different comparisons here, I think. Well, one is actually the comparison and one is not the comparison. So one is, how does it hold up to the original theatrical release? And the other is just as a standalone film. And I think in both cases, it gets an A here. Like, I liked this overall story. This is what I've always kind of wanted to see from the Justice League. I think this worked.
So before we go, and I know Tim's got other things he wants to grade, but let me just back up for a second here. Grading it on itself for its own merits, right? As if this was the movie that was released, not comparing it to the debacle we had for the first one. This movie would not have gotten made. This movie would not have been able to be released in the theaters as a 4-hour movie.
No.
Nobody would have made. So I'm looking at from that point of view that he made this movie because he could, because people were sick of the first one. They've been crying for this movie for how many years that we wanted the Snyder cut. And we were told there wasn't one, now there is one, and we're going to give it to you, and then we're going to give it to you in multiple movies. Now it's going to be just one movie. So he had basically carte blanche to do whatever he wanted to do. And it was going to be released on HBO Max as a streaming movie, and we don't have the constraints of worrying about, well, we can't show it enough times during the day, so we're not going to make our money back. We're not going to do a 4-hour movie that you would normally get in the theaters. So from that point of view, I thought this was very self-indulgent from Snyder, that this movie would never have gotten made. So if we didn't have the debacle we had before, he would not have gotten a chance to make this movie.
And his, like, if he did the original theatrical release, all right, he might have made this in maybe a 2.5 hour long movie.
My understanding,
but I don't think he could have gotten away with anything longer.
My understanding is it was supposed to have been a 3-hour movie, and we've had 3-hour movies before.
Yeah,
they're not common.
And I can see it getting that. That'd be if he pushed for it and they really gave him the benefit of the doubt. Yeah, okay, do a 3-hour movie. Yeah, a 4-hour movie.
No way. Of course not. No, but I mean a 3-hour.
Yep.
Like you said, you could trim this down to a 3-hour movie, and that would be fine.
Yeah,
I think that he would have done that. So I think it's fair to say that, like, we could have seen a version of this film in theaters. Would not be 4 hours. You're absolutely correct. That being said, I think that the main thing to take away in regards to the overall story, it would have been this story. His story was always supposed to have been Darkseid and the kind of the end of the world sort of thing. He planted seeds for it in Batman versus Superman. that is the biggest change that Joss Whedon made, probably, was just removing what was supposed to have been the ultimate villain of the film and making Steppenwolf the primary villain instead. So in that regard, the overall story was definitely different. This version of the story, in some form, that definitely would not be a 4-hour form, would have been what we saw in theaters. And I think this is superior. I think that not only is it superior in comparison, but as a standalone film, I like the way they laid out the story for Darkseid and all that. And I would have liked to have seen a sequel to it. I like where this story was going. And I know that Warner Brothers has said, no, we're not doing a sequel, period. Mm-hmm. The fan response has got to change their mind. They've tripped over themselves to change films so many times in the past. They did it with Batman versus Superman. They did it with Justice League. They did it with Suicide Squad. Like, they will go and, no, do this. No, this other movie failed, so now do that. Well, wait, go back to the first thing, but take out this other thing and add this fourth thing. Like, they meddle so much in things because they're so scared of how fans are going to react that they've destroyed movies on their own paranoia.
Yeah.
For them to finally have a success, a resounding success, critically and from fans with DC. This is what they've wanted from day one. How are you going to say, well, we've already made our decision? That is the exact opposite of your behavior in every other past DC movie. You've never stuck by your decisions before. You've always changed your mind. You got to change your mind on this one. You have to.
Yeah.
But,
yeah, I agree.
So what's next?
All right. So overall story, big picture, detailed plot points. I gave that a B-.
Give us an example of what you're referring to. Or a handful of examples. Are we talking about like individual character things like Cyborg's plot and Batman's plot or the breakdown with Steppenwolf versus Darkseid? Like what are you grading this on?
The thing, I don't even remember any of the specifics from when I first came up with this, because when I first came up with this truly was immediately after I finished watching the Snyder Cut. Okay. And so I had things in my head. Basically, a lot of it came down to they needed to tidy some of these things up. And there were some things, there were things in there that I think were unnecessary, that really didn't contribute to the story. There were some things in there that were a little confusing. The nightmare post-apocalyptic alternate reality multiverse thing that happened at the very end of it. I mean, Eric, your words of self-indulgent really covers it, because I think that's or Lou.
I don't think it was self-indulgent at all, but I get where Lou's coming from. But
it like that part of it was, sure, it was interesting, but in the scope of that movie, it didn't do anything for me. Who cares?
You will care when they do eventually change their minds and release the second one. All of that feeds into what's going to have happened in the second one, and possibly the Flashpoint movie.
And that I understand that, and that kind of seems to be a big if. But yeah, like that was a little confusing. There were, so there's details in there. The overall story was fantastic. The details that's where some things were missing. So yeah, B- for me on some of the details.
All right, Lou, what about you?
I haven't really thought about that part of it too much, but the change, and I started watching the movie side by side, watching a bit of one and a bit of the original, a bit of Snyder's Cut, and trying to see where the differences were and see where the story was changing. But I got sidetracked and just stayed with the Snyder Cut for the rest of it.
I mean, it is 4 hours. That's a big commitment.
That's what my problem was. But yeah, I mean, the things they changed I thought were good. I mean, the story made more sense. It flowed better. The points were better. Yeah, everything about that I think was good. It was a definite upgrade to the movie. So yeah, I guess B+, A-, something like that. Yeah.
I will concede the fact that the epilogue was a little bit confusing. And I think that, to your point, Lou, about it being self-indulgent, and I guess I agree with it being self-indulgent if you don't make the assumption that that also equates to some level of arrogance or something like that. I think if you're going to make it and you have all this footage, it'd be a shame to not let us see it.
No, I'm not saying he's arrogant.
Okay.
It's just that he could do whatever he wanted to do, and he was going to put everything into this.
You're right.
Sure.
And I think so. What would have happened is if this got into the theaters, I think that whole epilogue thing would have been trimmed out. That was like 20 minutes just for the epilogue.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
Yeah, I think
that's why.
Yeah, and the way it is
why I was
now,
saying like, hey, this could have gone to 3 hours.
Yeah, I think that it would have been the type of thing where that interaction would have been shortened down. Probably a lot of that would have ended up in the second movie. Like you would have trimmed down some stuff, made it a mid-credits or a post-credit scene, and then put some of that in the next movie. So I guess, yeah, B+, A-, and a lot of that I think probably because of the epilogue. But I think not only the overall story was good, but the individual parts of the story I think made so much more sense in this. In the Whedon cut, the overall story was maybe a C, and a lot of the individual parts were D's if you're going to do it overall, because there were some F's in there too. I think that this was, I'm going to go at least B+ on it.
So let me add one more thing, because you just reminded me of something else, Eric. I think that, one thing that the Whedon cut suffered from was that we didn't have any real background on who these characters were, right. Aside from, Batman, Wonder Woman, so forth. Flash, we knew him from the TV show, but not in this world. Right. Cyborg, I didn't know anything about him at all. I'd never read his stuff. And the motivations we had for who these characters were was very skimpy, if not left out entirely from the Whedon cut. So I had a much better grounded view of, that's why he's doing, especially Cyborg. I mean, we had a ton more stuff in this movie about Cyborg that I was like, this character makes a lot more sense to me now. And part of me is thinking to myself, okay, this guy is on the verge of being the biggest bad guy out there. Mm-hmm. And, he is right on the edge of being too powerful.
Yeah, he's about to become Skynet.
Exactly. Where's he going? What's his motivation for doing what he's doing? But I felt much better knowing about him, what I knew about him, because otherwise he didn't have a big role in the first movie, and we didn't really know who he was, and I didn't really care about him.
Yeah. Tim, do you have character development on your list?
No, not specifically.
Okay.
I
we
don't,
do now.
But, and I will say I completely agree with Cyborg. And in the original release, Cyborg was still my favorite character there, and obviously,
really,
oh yeah,
wow.
And in this release, it was even more, because they expanded so much on his story. They did so much more for him that I really appreciated. They also
I appreciate what he did with him in this movie. The first movie, I'm like, I don't care who he is.
I'm with Lou on the first one.
They also did so much more with the Flash.
Yeah.
In this one, they also, one thing that I really like that they changed in the theatrical version, that whole thing toward the end with the Flash, like, basically the only thing he was assigned to do was go rescue citizens and get them out of the area so they wouldn't die in a big apocalyptic explosion.
Right.
In this movie, they actually used him, and I like what they did with it. This was actually, though, that leads me, because that reminded me to one of those detailed plot points of, he's running around to build up that energy, which he was then transferring to Cyborg, so Cyborg could crack into the thing.
I know where you're going with this.
And Cyborg is like, okay, we're going to do it in 3, 2, 1. And then Cyborg gets pulled away, or no, I'm sorry, Flash gets shot. And so then Cyborg's kind of waiting and waiting. And so Flash, sucks it up after he gets shot, and he starts going around again. He then transfers the energy to Cyborg, and it takes like 4 minutes for Cyborg to crack the freaking thing open. Whereas before it seemed like, hey, this was going to be like, you give me the energy and I'm going to crack the thing just like that. But like, that was just this weird thing that the execution wasn't what we were led to believe earlier. So
that's
that
actually
was just a weird, awkward kind of a
That's
thing.
not where I thought you were going with
same.
that.
Okay.
Didn't bother me. What
Where do
bothered
you
me
think it
was
was going?
like Flash builds up all this like static energy basically, and then he trips. That's got to
it's
transfer
gone.
somewhere.
Nope. It was gone.
Yeah, right.
But that's not how electricity works. I mean, I guess maybe it goes into the ground. I'll give you that. But like, that's not how Flash typically uses that sort of.
Yeah.
Well, but the whole timing of the end sequence, it lost me for the same things Tim was just saying. He built up the speed. He's saying, "Okay, I'm ready to go. We're gonna do this. I can't hold it forever. I'm ready to go." And then Steppenwolf grabs Cyborg, pulls him away, and that whole thing went away. He's still running around with this pent up energy, and then one of the parademons shoots him. And that's when he falls down and goes, he's got this big gaping hole in his side. And I'm like, okay, so the whole timing is way off. I mean, this is never going to work now. And yet they made it work. I'm like, okay, I don't really buy that. But
and again, I think that's why maybe not an A for individual plot elements. Character development, I will say this. The changes to almost all the characters I liked. I liked the Superman better, and I'm not a big Superman fan. I was worried I wasn't going to like the changes to Batman. But I didn't mind them. I think that there was enough background for his motivation displayed in this movie that it fit. You don't often see an optimistic Batman, but you do. Like if you read the comics, there are times where he is. And so we got to see that. That was nice to see it and done in a way that kind of fit. I still say Affleck is my favorite Batman. And it's funny because we did a poll. More people voted for Affleck as being the best Batman after this movie than before. Like nobody voted Affleck before. And I think Affleck was the winner in the poll this time around. And I know that goes up and down over time. People change their opinions on it, but I just thought that was interesting. The Flash, you mentioned the thing about him rescuing the people being kind of his only role in the Whedon film. There was that moment where he kind of panics. He's like, I don't do this. I don't know what to do. How do I rescue all of them? And Batman says, you grab one and you save them. And then you grab another one and you save them. And like, to me, that moment, that was kind of a character building moment for the Flash. And that wasn't in this movie.
Sure.
And I kind of missed it. I liked that. That was one of the few good character moments in the Whedon cut. And maybe that was something Whedon added. And so that's why Snyder didn't want to include it. But I do feel like that kind of showed Barry growing up a little bit and kind of finding his place as a superhero. And that would have been nice to have included. Other than that one thing, across the board, all the characters were better. I've never really cared that much for Cyborg, and in recent years, they've kind of retconned the Justice League, and instead of Martian Manhunter being one of the founding members, now it's Cyborg, and Cyborg sometimes is kind of a deus ex machina. They kind of throw him in when they need everything magically fixed. I think he's a little bit overpowered. So in this movie, I've been kind of about it. The Zack Snyder cut was way better. Like I could empathize with the character better. His father and the interactions and the choice his father makes at the end, that was far better. Wonder Woman was less sexualized.
Oh, so much less.
Yeah.
And I'll say one of the things that I remember, I think it was on Random Chatter, talking about the theatrical version and how many like awkwardly lingering gratuitous ass shots that Whedon had of Wonder Woman in that movie that did not exist in this movie at all.
Yeah.
And yeah, you know, Gal Gadot, she's freaking gorgeous.
Yeah.
But you don't need to like do
that's not what the
that.
movie's about.
Like,
right.
No, that it's wrong. It's foolish. Whatever.
We also didn't have the whole.
We didn't see that in this.
Yeah, we also didn't have the whole massage therapy thing going on either between her and Batman, which didn't need to be there. It was good.
I forgot all about that.
Yeah.
I barely remember that at all. But the other thing too is you didn't have some of the comments from Aquaman. Remember the scene in the first one where Aquaman, I don't know, he's like accidentally sitting on the lasso or something, and he starts like spouting off all this, wow, like you're really hot kind of stuff, and you're like, what's going on? He's like, oh yeah, he's brushing up against the lasso somehow. Like there was that whole scene, and that was gone.
I don't even remember that.
It was when they were all in like
now
the.
That you mention it, I'm glad that's
gone. Like the jet, right?
Or the jet, one of those scenes where they're all like in the headquarters shot.
Yeah.
In Aquaman 2, to that point, was less comic relief in this movie.
Oh, he was way more serious.
Yeah, he was kind of a doofus.
Way more serious, way more grounded. Yeah.
Like he felt more like a superhero here, and he felt like he blended more into his own movie better here than he did in the Whedon, where he was like not quite a surfer dude sort of guy, but like
it felt less 80s, 90s action movie and more current movie.
Yeah.
Because he felt like an 80s action hero back, in the day.
Yeah.
Like in this movie, he was grumpy. And that's fine. In the first movie, he was like a Neanderthal.
Yeah. And really the only complaint I have related to him is Amber Heard was not necessary in this movie for any reason whatsoever, both socially and cinematically. So could have definitely
I think again
have done without her, but that's all I'm going to say about Amber Heard.
Another one of those things where they had the footage they included. I can't imagine there was very much footage left over after this movie. I mean, 4 hours. I'm confident he threw everything in.
Yeah.
And maybe trimmed some frames here and there for editing and pacing, but any scene where anybody had any dialogue for anything, I'm sure was edited. Oh, so that's the other thing. The Iris scene with the Flash. That was one other thing where I'm kind of like, So I liked the scene with Iris. I hated the part with the dogs as much as I love dogs. Like that seemed silly to me and not really like it didn't add anything, even though the scene, the rest of the scene with him saving Iris, that worked for me. But
totally.
The dog sitting
I thought
thing.
It was great story. I thought it was great effects that they did in it. The thing is they had to put him there, and they needed to have him have dialogue with someone who wasn't involved in the incident.
Have him pick up some pizzas from the local pizza place or something, though, right? Like it just seemed.
And it could have been that too. I think it was just basically like, hey, here's our options. What do you want to go with?
Yeah.
And that's what they picked, which fine. I agree.
Not the end of the world.
It was a touch awkward, and like the whole resume thing was a little goofy. But I will mention, and because you mentioned Martian Manhunter, so basically this cut had 3 epilogues. It had the Martian Manhunter epilogue, another confusing thing so it's one thing if there were definitely like sequels that were joined to this thing. So like if this were a Marvel film and Marvel will do their mid-credit and end credit scenes, that kind of stuff, and those things tie into known future movies or anticipated future movies. They did the Martian Manhunter thing. If you know nothing about Martian Manhunter or the Justice League, and there's no expectation of a sequel, what the hell is that about? Then they had the epilogue of Lex Luthor
and Deathstroke.
And Deathstroke again, and I know that was also in the theatrical release as well. But still, why? If there's no sequel that we're expecting that's going to have to do with that, which clearly leads to a sequel. But if they're not going to do it, then why?
I have an answer.
Right.
And then again, the whole post-apocalyptic thing. So, I mean, there were 3 epilogues to an already long movie. That was that's almost an hour. That's probably 40 minutes between the 3 of those.
Chapter 7 allegedly was 20 minutes. And then you run...
And that was all 3 of them?
Well, and then you run the credits. I think the Deathstroke part was either mid or post credits. But the Martian Manhunter and what they're calling the Nightfall sequence, those were part of Chapter 7. Those were the epilogue. So that was in that 20 minutes.
Gotcha.
Nightmare sequence, they call it, I think.
I'm sorry. Yes, you're right. I'm thinking Nightfall. That was a different Batman storyline. Yeah, right. Nightmare. Yeah. So 2 things. Number 1, the theatrical version did expect to have a sequel. Number 2, this version, again, Zack Snyder's probably thinking, I made this. You want me to give you what my cut would have been. This is what my cut would have been. Whether there's a sequel or not, this is how I would have done it because I would have expected there to be a sequel. So I'm not going to not include it now because if you want what my vision was, that's what my vision was at the time. And then third, and this is what I'm hoping, Zack Snyder, like the rest of us, probably knew that if this is successful, there's a chance that Warner Brothers, known for flip-flopping in how they meddle, would flip-flop again and say, let's go with the sequel for this.
But so the one thing in my mind about this, we can talk about this in a second. I think this is where you're going is what are the ramifications of this being released happen now to the rest of the movie world? Do fans have a say now? Are we going to get more of these kind of things petitioned?
Well, let's come back to that in a minute. Because that,
I'm with you. That's the next thing we're talking about. But I come back to the whole thing of what he gave us, and this was a legit director's cut, right? This was not the cut that we would have gotten in the theater.
Right.
So, that's what bothers me, I guess, about this comparison of, this is what he would have given us. No, it's not what he would have given us. He would have given us a movie that was 2.5, 2 3/4, 3 hours long. We may have gotten a director's cut after the fact, like this, down the road, but we wouldn't have gotten this in the theater. This would not have been the one to compare against the theatrical release that we had.
That's fair to a certain level, though. It would have been this movie. It just would have been heavily trimmed. It would have been Darkseid's the main villain and not Steppenwolf.
Oh, yeah.
It would have been, I mean, we still would have had some version of the Nightmare. It would have been way truncated. Because, again, I think a lot of that stuff was probably filmed with the filming of this to be used in the next film. We would have gotten, I mean, the Deathstroke sequence is only a couple minutes, really. I mean, that Lex Luthor thing, that would have still been in there. The Martian Manhunter thing, honestly, he might have ended up cutting that for time. But there's a lot of stuff that gets filmed and then gets cut. I still think that we would have walked away getting the same basic story, the same basic milestones.
I agree.
So I think it is fair to make those comparisons. I think it's fair to make comparisons about the character decisions. It's definitely fair to make comparisons about the visual effects. If you look at that last, if you've seen side-by-side pictures, the Zack Snyder cut, the scenes at the end especially, they're very desaturated. And the Whedon cut looks very much like an Avengers film. It's very saturated, bright reds, bright greens, bright blues. Whereas the Snyder cut visually looked a lot more like The Watchmen did. And that has an effect when you're watching it.
Oh, yeah.
Well, and that's Zack Snyder's style, which some people don't like. So, I mean, that right off the bat turns people off because they don't like that. And so that's somewhat related to the next thing that I graded, which was effects.
Okay.
And I gave effects 2 grades. Sometimes a B+, sometimes a C-.
Ooh.
Because sometimes they were pretty good. And other times, and I think, Eric, I even texted you this. It was a question of something like, are the effects intentionally blurry? Because there was so much, especially early on in the film, for some reason, a lot of it just looks like it was blurred over, like there was a fog over a lot of the effects.
I want to see what you're talking about.
One thing I'm glad that they did fix was Cyborg.
Oh my gosh, Cyborg! But listen, everybody threw a fit about Superman's mustache. I didn't even care about that. Cyborg in the first movie,
terrible,
horrible, like
terrible
one of
effects.
the worst examples of special effects in modern film, like that bad.
Yeah. So they considerably fixed him in this movie.
Yeah, and he still wasn't perfect, but like he was way, but he was definitely good enough.
Yeah. But yeah, there were a lot of things in this that I found to be, it was like, we can't do it so well, so we'll just make it blurry. Actually, a lot of the stuff on Themyscira. Okay,
I was going to ask if there was like a specific part of the film.
Well, so like one example of this was, horses riding along the plain in Themyscira as they're trying to get the cube away from
Steppenwolf.
From Steppenwolf, thank you. The clouds of dust that were being kicked up by the horses were just so bad. It was like practically 80s special effects of the dust that the horses were kicking up, like really like horribly obviously superimposed kind of stuff.
I'll go back and look at it again.
Yeah. And, some people were like raving about Steppenwolf's new look in this. Yeah, the armor was cooler, but the effect of the armor was just not good. It was this close to Michael Bay Transformers.
Thank you. That is exactly what I was about to just say.
Because they tried to do we have these cool scales that move. Stop that.
Look how many polygons our computers can animate at one time.
Moving.
Yeah,
exactly. Stop that. So
it was distracting.
That's the side of this that I was not happy with.
I agree with you fully on Steppenwolf's armor. In fact, if you had to ask me what is my biggest complaint across this entire film, it would be that there is nothing that felt more distracting to me than his armor. I did not like it. Yeah. And it's not even that it wasn't executed well. I just, as a design choice, it was distracting. I'm like, what kind of creature would want armor that does that? Is it supposed to be like if you poke him with your finger, it slices your finger off? Like what is the practical point of any creature from any planet?
It's got a pinch, right?
I mean, they can't be comfortable. Can you imagine like that riding up like in your backside when you're like running across a desert or something, chasing Themyscirian Amazons? That's gotta be uncomfortable. And like riding a horse, the horse ain't gonna like it. I mean, there's nothing about that armor that makes any sense. Yeah. That really felt like showing off to me. And Zack Snyder as a director does have those moments, and sometimes it works. In most other places in the film it did. And to me, I'm with you, Tim. In this one it did not. Oh, for the effects though, I mean, so many, if you're gonna give them, if you're gonna average the two out and say, okay, the good ones were good, the bad ones were bad, but what single grade are you gonna give it? I mean, I would still give it probably a C+ or a B- overall. The majority of the effects were really good. Were there some spots that weren't? Yeah. And even Cyborg still needed some work in a couple of places. But I think overall, the majority of the effects worked really well.
They did a nice job with the Flash.
Yeah, they really did.
I thought his effects were really, really well done. I like what they did with it. And Cyborg was just a huge improvement. Yeah. And I also liked the water effects, the Aquaman stuff. I thought they did a nice job with the water.
And
effects.
Water is really hard to do as an effect. Anything dealing with water.
Yeah, definitely.
Because it's transparent, but it has this weird, light bending thing to it, and
also the physics of it.
They did a good job with that.
It's hard to describe to a computer how the physics of water works, but as humans, without thinking about it, we see it and we know whether water is behaving like water or not. But to translate that, it's one of the biggest, I've been told it's one of the biggest graphic design problems with computer rendering and stuff that's hardest to get. I mean, if you look at the history of video games, that's the one thing, no matter how good your game looks, the water is always the trickiest thing to make work right.
Right.
Yep.
Lou, your thought on the effects? What grade would you give it?
I'd probably give it a C too. I mean, there was some things that stood out as being, but overall,
Okay.
I shouldn't say, I mean, overall I thought, well, they're not going to spend any more money on effects for the movie. They do what they did. They're not going to, polish it as much as if it was a theatrical release movie.
And
so
you have to take in mind, so that could explain the dust fogs too. I mean, if you're going to take your money and put your effects budget closer to the part of the movie people are going to remember when they walk away from it, which is going to be the end.
Yeah. So
money was a constraint.
So speaking of that, though, on the same thing with effects, let's talk about the aspect ratio of the movie.
Oh my gosh, I forgot about that. Strike what I said about the Steppenwolf thing. Cut that.
World.
Yeah, 4:3. What the hell are you thinking?
Yeah. So I mean, the movie starts out with a disclaimer saying this movie is shot in whatever 4:3, whatever they said, because that was the director's intended vision. I'm like, who the frig makes a movie today in 4:3 format? What kind of a moron would do that?
Even when they made television
that was my first thought.
in 4:3, they didn't make movies in 4:3.
Right.
They haven't done television in 4:3 for like a generation or two.
Yeah, but the thing is, the disclaimer says this was the director's vision or the intended vision. I'm like,
he's got some narrow vision.
Why?
Like quite literally glasses.
This guy makes movies. This is not what you do when you make a movie. I'm like, oh my Christ.
Yeah, everything I said about the Steppenwolf thing. Thank you. I forgot all about the aspect ratio.
I did too.
Steppenwolf armor's number 2.
Which I'll say though, because for as annoying as the aspect ratio was when the movie started, it is one of those things that the movie pulled me in enough that I no longer realized it, or it didn't bother me that much anymore. But overall, I agree. Yep.
It took me.
You should not be doing.
It took me 3 hours, a solid 3 hours into this 4-hour movie before it was there constantly for the first hour, and then in hours 2 and 3, it would pop in and out. Why are we in 4:3? I almost forgot we're in 4:3. Why are we in 4:3? And it would come and go. And then by the 4th hour, it finally got to the point where it didn't stand out to me as much. But man, it just, why would you want, I mean, I guess it keeps your vision all in one spot and there's less of your eyes darting around. And I'm trying to think of reasons why that might be a thing. And I think while I was watching the movie, I was thinking that, and I thought, okay, so you can basically keep your eyes center screen for most of the movie and you catch everything. There aren't going to be fringe things along the side that you're going to miss. Maybe that's a benefit. Maybe that was the intent. I don't know, but aspect ratio.
Yeah. I was blown away by that. I'm like, this is how this, because I was going into this movie kind of skeptically to begin with. And that was the first thing I see. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, I'll give it a shot. But wow.
Yeah. Yeah. It kind of immediately you're like, oh, do I even want to watch this?
Right.
And it was definitely worth watching. I think we all agree this is way better than the theatrical version. But man, there were some things that were a little rough.
Yeah, I just don't understand 4:3. What else do you have in your list? We're encroaching on an hour and a half here.
So the last item for me was directing, and I gave directing a solid A. Yeah. I thought the direction on this was great. Great camera angles. While the overall, like you said, the saturation is a lot lower on this, but the lighting still worked with that. And I think that's shown. And while I didn't watch it, one thing to note is a couple days ago, they released a black and white cut.
Oh, I didn't know it got released. Okay.
Yes.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So, I mean, to do something successfully in black and white, and we've talked about this, and I know you guys have talked about on Movie Chatter, your lighting has to really freaking work.
Yeah.
And I thought the lighting was spot on, and you know, that's a big part of directing. So, you know, the camera angles, the, you know, non-gratuitous shots of Diana, like we saw in the theatrical cut, I thought the directing was really good. I liked it.
I'd agree with that. I'm not always a Snyder fan. I think this is possibly his best work.
Could be.
I don't know about black and white though. I don't know that I want to see.
Is that on HBO or
Yeah, HBO Max.
Okay.
Yep.
I knew it was coming. I didn't know it actually.
I'll have to check it out. I'd be interested to see what they do. Yeah.
I kind of feel like the desaturation of the colors at the end, that's as far as I'd want to go toward black and white. Like I still want some color in my superhero movies. I want to see the red on the Flash's costume. I'm okay with Batman being black and gray, but I want to see some of the armor on Aquaman and Wonder Woman. And I'm okay with the black outfit for Superman. Like I'm not a fan of it, but I don't mind it either. I'm kind of ambivalent toward it. I don't know. Black and white.
Yeah, I'm not going to watch 4 hours of black and white, but I want to see part of it just to see. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll test it out.
I definitely, I did not like Superman's story in this, but I also didn't like Superman's story in the theatrical release. And I'm generally not a fan of Superman, so I carry that bias with me, admittedly.
Yeah, same here.
But I thought the story was bad. And that said, they certainly improved upon it in this release, because in the theatrical version, it was, oh, good, Superman's here, we win. Like it was done. The movie was a done deal as soon as Superman. In this, it was like, okay, Superman's here. We're no longer going to get the living crap kicked out of us, but it's still hard, and everyone still has something to do. And that's what, like, there was still a purpose behind everyone else being there. Otherwise, why the hell bother? We're all just going to go home.
And that's why I hate Superman in everything.
I mean, there was definitely more of a team to this. I mean, they did have the Justice League put together by the end and all working together to make that happen, which I thought was fantastic. But, you know, Superman shows up and it was still, like he always is, overpowered. I mean, he basically beat down Steppenwolf like, you know, yesterday's garbage. And it was very easy for him to do what he did. Granted, he needed some help. They made it look like he needed help. He probably didn't. But, but I thought the better aspect of that was that the whole team was working together to solve the problem.
And I think that's the thing. You can't, at this point in pop culture, you can't overpower Superman. You can't really do that because he is what he is. So you have to work around.
It's a huge
that.
And it's a huge challenge to write characters like that, because you have to come up with something.
Something he can't just walk into the room and fix.
Kryptonite and
and that's and thank goodness they didn't do the whole kryptonite thing, because that would have pissed me off too. But I like the fact
too tropey for him,
that they wrote around that hurdle, and they wrote it in such a way that he mattered. And he mopped the floor with Steppenwolf, but Steppenwolf wasn't the biggest problem at that point. You had the mother boxes, and then you had Darkseid, which presumably we'll learn why that's a problem in the second movie. I mean, I know a little bit about the comics, but him tossing Steppenwolf around the room, like, that's nothing before. That's the equivalent of any one of Thanos's minions before coming up against Thanos. So that doesn't mean Superman is going to be able to go toe-to-toe with Darkseid. Spoiler alert, he can't. Not to the point where he's just going to win the day. So, and it wasn't just about that. It was also about the mother boxes and the destruction of the Earth and closing the portal. So you had to have all of these different elements in play. And I liked that. The Whedon version where Superman walks in, I mean, you might as well call the movie The Resurrection of Superman, because like that was the point of the movie. And then, yay, we're all saved, we go home. No. And it was one of the things that made the first movie so atrocious.
I will say, though, Well, obviously, this whole introduction of Darkseid made the story better. There's a lot of people who are like, "Oh, well, this changed everything because now Darkseid is the big bad." He really wasn't. I mean, just because Steppenwolf, he was Steppenwolf's boss. Fundamentally, Darkseid didn't do anything in this movie. He gave. Right. He was a threat. He was an unrealized threat.
It was the Thanos thing from.
I was just saying it's the equivalent of the end credit Thanos scenes where you said, "Oh, so he's the big bad guy we're going to get later on."
Exactly. So I mean, still, Darkseid was Steppenwolf was still the focus of this, and I'm fine with that. But yeah, a lot of people were like, "Oh, well, this changed everything because now it's really all about Darkseid." No,
But you got to see that Steppenwolf was not like the big bad. He was the boss for this level, so to speak.
Yes, exactly.
And so that. It painted Steppenwolf in a different light. So Steppenwolf was definitely the primary antagonist of this film, without question.
Yeah.
But he is not the big bad. He is one of the big bad's horsemen of the apocalypse.
Minions. Yeah.
But and not even a very well-liked one at that. So it does set up that much bigger threat to come. And if Steppenwolf isn't even all that big a deal compared to Darkseid, and yet Steppenwolf is basically like slaughtering the whole planet, that provides some context to what's coming in the second movie, which, I mean, I gotta say, as far as cliffhangers go, that's a pretty powerful, holy crap, what are we going to be dealing with in the next movie sort of moment. So I think that works. It is a big deal that Darkseid makes an appearance. It is a big deal.
Oh, sure.
Steppenwolf is puny compared to Darkseid.
The impression that it left me with, though, was like okay, so we can't go through a portal, so we're going to have to go old school, get the Armada ready. So all I could think of was present day. All right, we can fly from here to Europe in 8 hours. Oh, airplanes aren't working. All right, load everyone up into the ships. We're going to get there in a couple weeks. It was like that was like the comparison in my head. It was like, oh, it's just going to take them a long, like they're going to get here in like decades. So who really cares? It seemed to like there was a threat there, but then there's no urgency to the threat anymore.
I mean, you have to get
still there. It's coming.
Yeah, you have to get rid of the portals, story wise, because otherwise they show up tomorrow.
Totally.
Right.
Yeah.
So
it's kind of like in Star Trek: The Next Generation when Q introduces the Enterprise to the Borg, right, and brings it back. So okay, but now they know you're here. It might take them decades to get here, but they're going to get here. So it's like, oh, we better start preparing for that. So even though it's far off, it's still an imminent threat.
It'll be a faster than light travel for them. So I don't think it's going to be decades. It's going to be
who knows?
A few years.
We don't know where they are. So I mean, I guess. Overall, are we there yet to talk about our feelings?
I hope so, because we're an hour and a half into the episode.
Okay, so I look at this as a couple things, and Tim's great at things on different things, obviously, but I think overall, does it work as a movie better than the original? And I think that the character building, the story he wanted to tell, in the overall feel of it, I say yeah. I mean, much better than the original release that we had.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. I mean, I would say that this movie is probably a B+ for me, and the theatrical release was probably like a C, C- maybe. So, I mean, a considerable difference between the two, and it was enjoyable. Like I said, the 4 hours flew by.
Yeah,
it didn't feel like 4 hours.
I think on subsequent viewings, it's going to feel too long to me. I can tell you already the stuff that is going to start to bore me is the stuff with Lois, Martha, Superman's resurrection. And And there was very little that changed in that whole post-resurrection battle scene and stuff, which I was always kind of annoyed with anyway.
Yeah,
I think it was very, very unnecessary. But it was like this whole, oh, we're going to bring you back, but then we have to recruit you again because you're confused in life. And why? Why take that tangent? I don't understand why we had to go on that ride.
Because they needed a action scene.
Yeah, maybe.
That's probably it. I think it was probably a pacing thing.
They had to reinforce that Superman is overpowered. Because basically that's what that action scene does. It's Superman versus the rest of the Justice League, and the rest of the Justice League gets their asses handed to them.
Yep.
There it is.
Yeah, pretty much.
That show's over.
Now, one thing we didn't touch on, and we started to, and then Eric said we're going to talk about it later, which I do agree we should put it off till later, but the whole aspect of how this happened.
Yeah, no, totally different episode. We already should have broke this up into 2 episodes because that is definitely something to explore, and how it happened, whether it should have happened, whether it should happen again, if so, under what circumstances.
Let's do a show on that because I think that's an important topic.
Yep, absolutely. But, in this case, it did happen. It worked out well. It seems like we all enjoyed it.
I'm glad it did. Yeah. I wasn't glad before it happened, but after it happened, I'm glad we got here.
And I have to say that I was tolerant, I think is the best word to use. I was tolerant of the stuff that had come before. And now I can say I enjoyed this movie. I think this is a good movie, and I'm proud of it. Like, I'm proud to say that I really like this movie. I'm a fan of it. I was not a fan of the others. I tolerated them. They were okay. But this was really good.
Yeah.
So, and I fully endorse the sequel. I think that they need to make a declaration, they being Warner Brothers, that this is canonical and this is the direction that things are going to go. It was always meant to have been. Gal Gadot had said that the second Wonder Woman movie was always tied into this version of the universe. The Aquaman movie seems to fit this character better. I don't know what changes may or may not have already been made regarding the Flashpoint movie coming up. I know the Ben Affleck Batman movie got nixed, which I'm devastated about. But
yeah, that's unfortunate.
They need to have this continue. Period. I think that this is... They wanted something that could compete with the Marvel movies. This is the direction to take. They're different from Marvel. And I'm not saying one's better than the other because I don't care. I want both. But
I agree.
This is the both that I want.
This is good stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that they have to, it amazes me that Warner Brothers does movies with really, really good effects. And I don't know what happened in this movie. Like, they work with really good effects houses to do stuff. Like, was no one available? Were they all on vacation? Were they busy with other stuff and decided, hey, we're not going to do something that could potentially be, Warner Brothers' biggest release for the year? I don't know.
Keep in mind 2 things. The ways in which they did put limitations on Zack Snyder. One, Zack Snyder did want to release this as different episodes, and it's been reported that Warner Brothers were the one that stepped in and said, no, it's 1 4-hour movie. You're not doing the 4 1-hour segments. That was not Snyder flip-flopping. Snyder still wanted the 1-hour segments. Warner Brothers said no. And the other one was not knowing whether this is going to be a success. They gave him X amount of money.
Yeah. And that was one of the reasons why, going back months and months when rumors kept milling about over the Snyder Cut. And basically I was, and I'll fully admit I was wrong. I said it's not going to happen because I don't see Warner Brothers throwing more money to recreate the same thing that was already released.
Yeah.
Right.
And they did. And, to their credit, they came up with something better. But it just seemed wild to me that was like, hey, we're going to spend X number of lots of dollars on this, and it was really bad. And so we're going to spend X number of lots of dollars on it again to make it better.
Yeah. Well,
it doesn't happen really often in
discussion
Hollywood.
for the next show we want to have. So
Yeah.
All right. Well, speaking of which, that is going to do it for this episode of Random Chatter. Thanks again to Mediocre Modeler for coming in here and joining us for most of the episode. We really should have broken this up into 2 episodes in hindsight, but that's okay. So we would like to know what you think. So if you're watching this on YouTube, be sure to leave your comments below. Otherwise, hit us up on Twitter at RandomChatter. You can email us, randomchatter@randomchatter.com. And otherwise, we will be back here again next Sunday night. Same bat time, same bat channel.
I see what you did there.
Yeah, see? I'll probably get sued now, too. For more reviews. And also, we will be bringing back the top 3 news items for the week and the lightning round. And we look forward to seeing you then. So until then,